the development and the progress that we make in our continent. Number one is integration, the free movement of goods, services, and people. The challenge that we've had over the years is the interconnectedness of Africa. Challenges of travel from one country to the other, either by air, by sea, or by rail, or by road. Progressively working with partners like JICA, we have made progress. Not as much as we could, but we have made significant progress in modernizing our ports. For example, modernizing the port of Mombasa to make it much more efficient for purposes of moving goods and services around our continent. We are invested in transport networks. At the moment, we are discussing the building of the railway from Kenya to Uganda to DRC, and finally to join it to the other side on the Atlantic, and many other transport routes. So importantly, to connect Africa is of significant importance, and I must congratulate Japan for participating in connecting our continent. Secondly, is to make sure that we have a policy environment that supports and promotes intra-Africa trade. Today, intra-African trade is around 15%, compared to 60% in other regions, including in Asia, here in Asia. And therefore, the signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, that was a milestone agreement, now signed by 47 countries, establishes the mechanism for us to remove barriers, to facilitate movement of goods and services around our continent. It is estimated that with the full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we should be able to unlock $450 billion of trade. We should be able to lift up to 30 million Africans out of poverty, and we can move our continent in the right direction. Kenya, for example, has taken the policy position that to facilitate the movement of people and goods and services, we have not only signed into the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to eliminate barriers, we've signed into the East African Community, we've signed into the tripartite agreement, and also COMESA, to build Africa into one single trading bloc with 1.4 billion people and a GDP of $3.7 trillion. And additionally, as Kenya, we have removed visa requirement for any African coming to Kenya to make it possible for Africans, for citizens, for our continent to move freely and to eliminate unnecessary barriers that ultimately impedes trade, impedes movement of people, and reduces transition of services and other requirements that facilitate the development of our continent. Finally, is to work on instruments that also facilitate trade with other nations. Signed the EU Economic Partnership with the EU. We will be having a meeting as the Africa Union next month in November in Angola to discuss trade relations between Africa and the European Union, the 27 countries in the European Union. We are renegotiating AGOA with America. We are signing other agreements with other countries. And TICAD provides us an opportunity for us to have a conversation with this great country, with Japan, so that we can equally look at eliminating barriers that impede trade between Africa and Japan. A case in point is a discussion I had with the Prime Minister of Japan 2 days ago on looking at how we can remove barriers on our agricultural goods that come to this country. Kenya exports tea, coffee, horticulture, macadamia, avocado to many European countries. But unfortunately, we still have barriers of trade of our agricultural goods to Japan. We are looking forward to use the TICAD framework to negotiate as Africa so that we can have greater market access to Japan, to Asia, and use Japan as our friend to launch our way into the Asian market. And that is what brings us here to look at regional trade, intra-Africa trade, and to use it to drive our progress, our prosperity, and our business.
Thank you so much. So, Your Excellency, thank you so much. Obviously, Kenya is in the leadership position on the African continent, but having that leadership for the entire region for this free trade agreement is, I think, is a very important message to send to our government as well. Thank you so much. May I turn to Mr. Ishiguro from JETRO, and congratulations on a very successful business exhibition, which I thought was wonderful. But please make your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shibusawa. I would like to speak in Japanese. There are 3 points I would like to mention. JETRO is promoting a trade, and to coincide with the TICAD, TREC business forum is being held. And one thing which I would like to report to you is, looking back on our history, 194 companies. This is record high number of businesses that are taking part in the forum. 194 businesses. This is the number I would like to report, of which 133 are participating for the very first time. So what I want to share with you as point number 1 is the Japanese businesses' interest in the African market is rising. Second point is that scratch the surface. That is what we like, how we want to achieve access the market. If I could take some examples of businesses, what is going on in the local market, and people who can offer solutions to those challenges are successful. In the case of Ebara, for example, pump prices are very expensive, but in Kenya, there are not many rivers, and therefore you need to dig deep wells in order to get access to water. And conducting maintenance in an expedited manner, and that is kind of compensating for the high price. So on a life cycle basis, Ebara is able to offer high quality pipes. And in the case of Fuji Films, they're using AI, and X-rays are being offered in places where there is no electricity. More than 100 times of X-ray operations can be conducted. So in this way, there are companies that are taking on the challenges to address societal problems or challenges in Africa. Not just scratching the surface, but entering into the market deeply is very important. The third point, as was mentioned by Shibusawa-san at the outset, I feel that we're entering into an era of investment. International cooperation, of course, is important, but the role is that is expected of Japan is investment. Especially, there's a big population amongst the youth in Africa, and how to provide quality employment is what is expected of Japan. And therefore, at JETRO, we're going to promote investment, that's number 1, and also support startups. So to provide lot of employment opportunities for the youth is very important. And the third point is a point that was covered in the Business Forum about the pop culture. Animation, anime, manga, this culture is highly valued and appreciated in Africa, especially among the young population. And we, in Japan, anime, manga, the soft power, through soft power, we want people to have more interest in the products and services that Japan can offer. And then with the value and the sense of ethics that we have in Japan should also be communicated. And so we want to further support investment into Africa.
はい、ありがとうございます。Thank you very much, Mr. Shiguro. I think the last point was very, very important because when we think about free trade agreements, we think about the traditional goods and services, which is very, very important. But as Mr. Ishiguro pointed out, the youth and also this pop culture, soft power kind of that kind of non-barrier to that kind of development, I think is also very, very important. His Excellency mentioned about connecting, integrating not only goods and services, but people. And I believe the airline industry is very good at connecting people. So I would like to invite Mr. Lima Yadeja for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you, TCAT, for this opportunity. As His Excellency the President said it well, connectivity is very much needed in the continent. We in Africa have a huge population of more than 1.4 billion, and the amount of goods being transported through the continent is huge. At Ethiopian Airlines, we do fully understand the need for timely continental free trade area, and we appreciate the initiatives by African Continental Free Trade Area. And being in this business for the last 8 decades, we are the true witness to observe the development and also change of human life by being connected to the rest of the world, not alone the inter-regional integration. When we start flying from the east to the west, we observed a huge movement of indigenous African way of doing business between the regions that enabled Africans to discover their true indigenous identity and do business around that very unique characteristics. For us, we strongly believe that the African Continental Free Trade area will be very instrumental, provided that some of the current challenges we do have at hand got solution timely. The first one is the infrastructure issue. Interregional trade, interregional mobility can be assured by having standard infrastructure in place, like road, railway, and the like, because unless we do have to the standard infrastructure, it will be very difficult to move goods from one country to another. The other serious concern area is non-tariff barriers. The bureaucratic customs, licensing, and also inconsistent regulations between countries inhibits the movement of goods timely. In today's world, time is very important, and the faster we can transport goods along the borders, the better the acceptance and the productivity will be. Therefore, the non-tariff barriers need to be properly looked into. The other issue that encounters is fragmented industrial policies. the industrial policy in one country will not match with the policy in other country. For example, Ethiopian industrial policies are not aligned with that of Kenya or Burundi or Rwanda, and hence whatever we produce in one country might not go without hassles to the other country. The other serious concern area is limited access to finance. In cooperation with companies like JETRO, we need to improve access to finance for young, energetic, and educated Africans. We do have very strong workforce. We do have very talented, young, educated personnel. Therefore, having access to finance will enhance. Unless we provide them access, a good access to finance, this will remain to be a challenge. The other issue will be skill and the technology gap. In universities across Africa, we can easily teach the theoretical part of the science, but having hands-on personnel need a practical exposure and also training through technological guidance. Therefore, working in these areas might enable the movement of goods across African borders. Equally, it is important when it comes to human mobility to have a free visa or African Union's free movement protocol to be in place and ratified by African countries. His Excellency the President clearly said that Kenya is doing a great job in this regard. Thank you very much. Under your leadership, we saw that we Africans can easily go to Nairobi and do business. As I said earlier, we do have a strong interest in startups in Kenya. Those kind of free movement are very vital in order to enable the spirit of African continental free trade area. It is equally important to have a standardized educational curriculum in the African continent. Today, a university graduate in Addis Ababa might not be able to got a license and enter into professional exercise in Nigeria or in Mali or in Senegal because the curriculums are different, and hence it is really important to have a standardized curriculum when it comes to training requirements along the continent. The other issue is also information lack on labor market data. If Ethiopia made available the requirement when it comes to labor, and if Kenya is able to provide that kind of human resource, or if Ethiopia is ready to export its labor to Kenya and Kenya do the same, it will enable the spirit of the African continental free trade area. At Ethiopian Airlines, we are always working hard to address the issue of logistics. We are currently flying to more than 64 cities in Africa, and wherever we go, we saw that the challenges, especially in non-tariff barriers, is really challenging us a lot, and it hinders the development of Ethiopian Airlines. Therefore, as a company, we strongly advocate the single African air transport market, SATM, and also we are highly investing and also working around the policymakers when it comes to the enablement of the African continental free trade area. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your comments reminded me of Japan's success in our development, and it was basically based on infrastructure of air, road, and rail. And if we imagine Japan had tariffs on 7 prefectures, it would have never, developed in the way it was. But I think at the very end, I thought it was very important because we could have all the agreements in place for free trade, but unless you have the human capital to deliver based on that, I think that's a very important point. Thank you so much. I would like to turn to the business sector regarding this topic, and initially I would like to ask Mr. Takaku from Unicharm for his comments.
はい、皆さんこんにちは。
Thank you very much. I am Takaku from Unicharm. I want to start by thanking for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you very much, Ibusawa-san, for having me in this panel discussion. So I want to speak along the theme of this panel discussion, promoting inter-regional African integration and connectivity within and beyond Africa. I would like to speak from the perspective of a private company. But before that, let me introduce you to Unicharm. We provide diapers for babies and adults and sanitary products in developing nations and advanced nations. To address societal challenges, we are operating across 80 countries around the world. In Asia, we have #1 share, and globally we have #3. We are #3 in terms of market share. We're very grateful to say that 70% of our business comes from international business. Entering into the African market started from 2012 when a local subsidiary was established in Egypt. It is a very big entity with production facility. Language, culture, those are the reasons why the Egyptian entity is overseeing Northern Africa. But as you know, Sub-Saharan Africa, with a population of more than 1 billion, it is a very attractive market. However, there are 47 countries. There are so many countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, and therefore making effective use of limited resources is necessary. We have our own index, KPI, stability and growth of the economy, population, and safety, business infrastructure, life infrastructure. Those are the indices that are used and are scored, and we're focusing on 5 countries in rolling out our business. Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. These are the 5 countries that have been selected. 2023 and beyond, as you can see, this is a product that is dedicated to the African market. And moreover, this year, by the end of 2025, fiscal year 2025, in Kenya, together with Toyota Tsusho, a Japanese entity, we want to establish a local subsidiary. Especially in Kenya, it is an important pillar for our business in Africa. Kenya is a leader in Africa, and as a hub in Northern Africa, it has a geographical superiority, and there is an expectation that it will contribute to the regional growth. And therefore, integration of Africa and connectivity within and beyond Africa will be a benefit for us. And at the same time, locally produced and locally consumed, and therefore localizing management is imperative for us. Producing and distribution based on local needs, having a good understanding of the needs of the local people, and produce products and distribute the products that will create employment is what we want to achieve. And this is what I've brought with me today. This is a sanitary product that consists of 1 sanitary product in each pouch. And this is a product that any consumer can buy when they need it. So integration of the African region is something that will expedite the access of capital from Japan. Moreover, when we do our business, for example, customs clearance or receiving license permits to do business, it's quite cumbersome to do that in different countries, but if it becomes standardized, I'm sure it will be conducive to accelerating the process. And lastly but not least, I would like to say that our business is empowering many women locally. Small-sized kiosks. We would visit these kiosks and meet with the owners and engage in dialogues and conversations with them in selling our products. And of course, we are selling sanitary products, but at the same time, we talk about periods, about the knowledge to enlighten the local people. So the use of sanitary products is still around 40% in Africa, and together with the government officials and government staffs, for example, sanitary products to be offered in primary schools and offering education programs. So we want to contribute to the local community. And at the end of the day, that will support the empowerment of women in the society. In order to make this possible, as I said, African integration is necessary, and connectivity within Africa is indispensable. And so with this meeting as a trigger, I hope we will pave the way going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the promotion of intra-regional African integration connectivity, we can have all these rules in place, but I think Mr. Takaku made a very important point, especially for the consumer businesses. You have to be close to your market. So thank you very much for that. Sorry to keep you waiting, but Mr. Kovida, may I have your comments, please?
Thank you very much. Let me just quickly say what the B20 is. So the B20 is the business stream of the G20, and South Africa has the honor of chairing and hosting the G20 this year. And we are, as the business organization, the biggest business organization in the country, hosting the B20, and I am the B20 Sherpa, essentially leading the B20. We have put Africa at the center of the agenda for B20. And through 8 task forces, we have looked at issues that are totally relevant to the continent and actually contribute to the need and talk to the need for the continent to become more integrated and for value chains to be more integrated and for the continent to actually address itself as a single block in many issues that it needs to deal with and in many negotiations it needs to have with multilateral organizations and others. So I'm just going to quickly run through the themes, the 8 critical areas that have come out of the B20 and will contribute to the theme of this panel. The first is to power infrastructure and industry through capital access. And we are looking at a number of priority issues. One is blended finance, innovative financing mechanisms and instruments, and finance access to finance for SMMEs and underserved groups. We're also looking at and making recommendations on the problem of debt faced by the continent and talking to what rating agencies need to do to have a different approach towards the continent and the way they rate the continent and rate countries on the continent. The second is to drive food security through sustainable agricultural value chains, which we think is absolutely critical. And the priorities we're looking at is the resilient food systems, climate smart agriculture, empowering agri-businesses, and driving food security through focus on affordable, nutritious diets and resilience to global shocks. The third one is to build sustainable and climate responsive economic systems. And here the priorities are to mobilize climate finance at scale, to accelerate renewable energy and technology adoption, and to ensure inclusive growth by enabling SMEs and underserved groups to benefit from green transitions. The fourth one is to empower Africa's digital and skills transformation. And here the priorities are to invest in digital infrastructure and connectivity, to equip the workforce with future-ready digital skills, and we have one of our strengths as a continent is the young population we have. We need to equip that population with future-ready digital skills so that it contributes to the continent and contributes to other parts of the world, and to leverage responsible technology and transparency. The fifth one is to unlock Africa's industrialization in the critical minerals value chain and other areas. And here the priorities are to scale sustainable mining and local refining, to address energy and logistics gaps, to strengthen governance and policy frameworks, and to generally re-industrialize Africa so that we actually create jobs and we actually value add on our minerals and concentrate on localization of products. The sixth theme is to foster business resilience and market stability. And here we want to looking at enforcing governance and anti-corruption measures, looking at rules-based trade and how we promote that, and looking at SMMEs and regional integration by harmonizing regulations. The seventh is to unblock investment and growth through well-designed public-private partnerships, which we believe are critical to growth on the continent. And here the priorities are to build transparent, trusted public-private partnership frameworks, to mobilize private capital for infrastructure, and to promote regional public-private partnerships and local capacity building. Finally, the eighth priority is to build competitive markets by empowering women, upgrading SMEs, and championing safe workforces. Priorities here are to empower women through targeted policies, leadership opportunities, and entrepreneurship support, to drive inclusive growth, strengthen SMEs with finance, technology, and market access, and to champion safe, equitable work environments. And we also have a task force that's looking at trade and investment and how we actually, as a continent, look at getting trade, intracontinental trade, but also drawing investment into the continent and navigating our way as a continent through the current geopolitical situations that we face. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The 8 points that you made resonates with me because a lot of it is, at Keizai Doyukai, we're launching a impact fund into Africa from Japan. The investors being the Japanese corporates and hopefully some financial institutions, and public-private sector, hopefully partnership there as well. So hopefully we can provide that new capital mobilization that you mentioned. Your Excellency, I would like to come back to you, if it's okay. You already mentioned this in your opening remarks, but assuming a full implementation of the African continent free trade agreement, you know, there are many benefits, obviously, but what is the key benefit for the private sector business that's already operating, you think, on the continent?
Fundamentally, there are three issues that the full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area will unlock. Number one is to unlock opportunities in trade, in business, which with backward linkages goes all the way to agriculture, and with it, job creation. So there is a value chain a value chain benefit from productivity through agro-processing that creates jobs and creates value, to SMEs that then participate in markets and trade and business. So there is a lot that can be unlocked, and that is why I said that the full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is going to add additional income of up to $450 billion and has the potential to lift up to 30 million Africans out of poverty in the following manner. That whole trade infrastructure taps into the skills, the expertise, the knowledge of our young people and brings young people into the center of trade, investment, and business, either working in our agro-processing and value addition ecosystems, or whether it is value addition of agricultural products, value addition of our minerals, value addition in our motor vehicle assemblies, technology assemblies, and the whole of that space. And secondly, apart from job creation, and I'm talking about real jobs, that's what we are experiencing, for example, in Kenya. We're doing more in our county aggregation and industrial parks to add value to our products. We're working with the special economic zones to add value to our products, both for consumption locally and for trade with other countries. That's number one. Number two, it brings the private sector into the equation. And with it, private sector expertise, private sector capital to support the whole growth of the African continent. Private sector will come in as processors. They will come in as traders. They will come in as logistics. They will work with institutions or corporations like Ethiopian Airlines, Kenya Airways. These are corporations that will benefit in enabling logistic movement of the products we produce in our continent. And therefore, it benefits the young people of our continent, and Kenya and Africa, for that matter, being a very young continent, there is need to deliberately create opportunities for work. Number two, there is also need to deliberately support micro, small, and medium enterprises run by young people, run by women, and everybody in that ecosystem by leveraging on private sector expertise and private sector capital. And then finally, it translates into economic activity. It translates into wealth generation, wealth creation, and finally dovetails into the prosperity of our continent, and Kenya and Africa contributing meaningfully to global trade. As we talk today, Africa contributes only 3% of global trade. Yet we have 1.4 billion people. That is not commensurate with what our wealth and our contribution should be. And therefore, the full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area holds a special place in job creation, in driving our micro, small, and medium enterprise ecosystem, in creating wealth, and in eventually making Africa prosperous. And that is why we are invested in making sure it works. In November this year, in Angola, we will be discussing the reform of the Africa Union to be a fit-for-purpose organization. My colleagues, African heads of state, and government chose me as the champion for the reform of these institutions. And we are aligning our institutions so that they better serve our continent, our young continent, to better serve the young people that we have in our continent. And therefore, we are focused on making sure that working with partners like Japan and other partners, and as I told you, we will not only be having this conversation with Japan, we will be having this conversation with the US, we will be having this conversation with the EU, because we believe there is value that Africa can bring into the equation. Value of the assets that we have, whether it is our agricultural land, value that we have in our natural minerals, value that we can bring of our big market, and especially realizing that 1 in every 4 people in the world will live in the African continent by 2050. So we will form the largest market, and it is us as leaders of today to prepare ourselves and the entire space to be ready for the Africa that we are looking forward to in the very near future.
Your Excellency, thank you so much. Seemed like to me, thank you. The private sector, I think the role, as is mentioned, is all about value creation. So that's what it leads to, I believe. Ishiguro-san, the same question. In full implementation, what does it mean for the private sector?
AFCFTA, there's high expectation because but same thing has been said, 1.4 billion of population, GDP. Africa is already 70% of ASEAN GDP, but unfortunately that's divided between 54 countries, and it's difficult for Japanese companies to grasp as a whole. But if we can capture that as a whole through African continent FTA, it's going to make it easier for Japanese companies to take inroads. So institutions and standardization of norms are what we hope for. So one standard will be effective in another country. That's the ideal. And also supply chain will be established in that context. It's something that already occurred in ASEAN, but unfortunately Thai and Cambodia are in conflict. But Thai plus one kind of supply chain was established in ASEAN, and with AFCFTA, we could also expect such a model to emerge in Africa. Japanese companies investing in Africa and creating new values. That's what we are expecting. Thank you.
So, thank you. We know about the benefits, but let's talk about the challenges for this, interregional value chain in human mobility. And I'm going to ask the question to our representation from business in Unicharm and Ethiopian Airlines. So Takaki-san, maybe you could start.
Yes, as was mentioned, there are challenges. For example, early implementation of AFCFTA. This, I think, is what we hope for. For us in the private sector, when we think of doing business in a country, we will be making big investments up front. We are in the equipment business, and therefore, for stable business operation, a certain scale is indispensable, and therefore doing business, it's not really about doing business in one country. How we can use that country as a gateway to do business in more countries. That is an important mandate for us. There are inefficiencies in the African continent, but with the full implementation of the FTA, there will be a value chain that will be built, and therefore big opportunities for business to thrive. In addition to tariff, there is the approval system, which is different by country. from our factory in Egypt to West Africa. If we want to ship products, we need to go through the approval process in each country, and this process has to be addressed in every country we enter into from scratch. It could take a year at times. So I will be looking forward to addressing this matter so that there is more of a harmonization or standardization and be more simplified so that it is more conducive to building a value chain. Especially when it comes to infrastructure and education, talent development, working hand in hand between the public and private sector, it's very important. Unicharm, a Japanese company, we want to grow together with Africa, and we will conduct management, locally based management, to contribute to the development of the local community economy and generate employment to enhance the living standards of the local community. That is all for me. Thank you.
Mr. Lema, may I invite your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. We at Ethiopian Airlines strongly believe, for a fact, we say we know Africa by heart, because we are in the continent doing business, as I earlier said, for the last 8 decades. For the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, to be fully in implementation, it is high time to liberalize the African airspace. It is high time also to liberalize the way we do when it comes to governance and ownership of critical infrastructures like airports and handling at those very airports, because since in majority of African countries those kind of services are monopoly, it lacks the possibility for companies like Ethiopian Airlines to negotiate and get service for a value of money that we pay. Therefore, we Africans need to strongly work on infrastructure development, liberalization of services, and also the non-tariff barriers need to be seriously looked into, because those kind of bureaucratic way of doing things will encourage corruption, which in other way creates inefficiency that hinders development, the required development and the spirit of the African Free Continental Trade Area. We strongly also recommend that the visa issue in Africa is of a serious concern, because as an African, it is only very limited countries like Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, and the like, which allow Africans to obtain visa on arrival or get free access. Currently, Ethiopia also introduced a free on arrival visa facility. Those kind of things are very vital and important to reduce the cost of logistics and transportation in Africa. Therefore, we really need to seriously consider a policy framework that enables Africans to trade and Africans to move between countries without any barrier. It is important also to collaborate rather than compete among African countries in order to create a conducive environment. In order to do so, we have a lot to learn from countries like Japan, and it is also important to closely work with companies like JETRO, which are trying to bring the Japanese business and the capital into Africa, because one of the critical factors in Africa is access to capital. Hence, if we are able to succeed in these areas, hopefully Africa will be more connected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, Shigo-san has to leave. So the session, I'm sorry, in Japan, we can't be over time. And we have to apologize for being 30 seconds over, and actually I'm 3 minutes 30 seconds over. So my apologies, and apologies to Mr. Kovida for not being able to invite your final comments as well. But thank you very much for this very lively discussion. Actually, the one comment that I would like to close with is we're talking about free trade agreement, but I think the comment, very important comment by Mr. Lima in his opening remarks, is everybody has their indigenous identity. So it's not coercing, which is in Japanese called kyose, into one, but there's another word called kyose, same sound, different characters. It's about mutually living together, basically, and so that's what's important, I believe, for the co-creation and for the prosperity for Africa and for Japan and the world. So,
allow me to say one final thing,
sure, please.
Moderator. In our audience is our Deputy Chairperson of the Africa Union Commission, and part of the reform that we are working on is exactly to address the challenges the private sector is raising, that we should have a unified, standardized approach where business can, like a one-stop shop for Africa to be able to speak with one voice. And the reform that we are undertaking at the Africa Union Commission is so that we can give greater leeway and power for the Africa Union Commission to speak for Africa, to act for Africa in a unified manner. And the Africa Continental Free Trade Area will create a bigger pool and a larger market and standardized mechanisms that would allow private sector to thrive as we drive trade in our continent. And I'm sure our Deputy Chair will pick it up as we work on the reform process.
Okay, Your Excellency, thank you very much for your closing remarks, and the session is closed. Thank you so much.
ありがとうございました。Thank you very much. So please give them another big round of applause. Thank you very